Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another Brunch and Learn brought to you by The Qualified. My name is Trapera Denson, and I will be serving as your host for today's session. Super excited to be with everyone today, and we're so glad to see you all in our audience. So thank you so much for joining today's session. These Brunch and Learn events are not only designed to provide you with some wonderful opportunities to get continuing education units that you may need to keep your certifications going, but we also want to create a space for you to connect with your peers and to meet some new colleagues as well. So we have posted some comments in the or questions in the comment section, and we want you to kind of engage. Let us know a little bit more about you, where you're joining us from, even what you're currently doing, what's your current role, if you want to share that much. Also, I'm going to add this. If you're willing to connect with some of your peers or some of the other people who are in this event on LinkedIn, then share that. Post something in the chat that lets us know that you're open to connect with folks, all right? If your name is a little different here than it appears in LinkedIn, then let us know what name we can find you on in LinkedIn, all right? So let's make sure that we have a good time today. I believe that this is going to be an outstanding session. I also want to just remind everyone, if you are making any fun posts about this event on LinkedIn or on your other social media accounts, then please tag The Qualified. We want to join in on that celebration with you. You can find us at The Qualified on most of our social media platforms. So please do tag us. We want to join in. We want to comment. We want to engage with you on social media as well. So a little bit about The Qualified, everyone. Some of you may be brand spanking new to the Brunch and Learn events that we offer. Others of you may have joined us times before, but The Qualified is here to serve you in a multitude of ways. We offer exam prep. We offer continuing education opportunities, much like this Brunch and Learn that you are attending today. And then we also help employers find the best candidates to fill their job vacancies. So again, we serve our health information management audience or community in a variety of ways. To learn more about The Qualified, please visit us on our website, the-qualified.com. So we are very, very excited about today's presentation and today's guest. I want to tell you a little bit more about him. It's James Donaher. He earned a bachelor's degree in psychology and in foreign languages from Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio. Now, he's also worked in scientific research laboratories. He's worked in behavioral health facilities, providing direct patient care. He has held several positions in a variety of sectors. One that I found very interesting was that he was an editorial assistant for a medical publishing company in New York City. He's also worked as an inpatient and ambulatory coder at Waterbury Hospital. He has served as an inpatient coder and compliance manager. And right now, today, James is serving at 3M Health Information Systems. He's working as a clinical content development analyst for various components of various groupers, as well as for IRDRG. So James is both the director and president of the Connecticut Health Information Management Association. He is a member of the advisory board for HIM at Middlesex College in Middletown, Connecticut. And he teaches medical coding and billing at Naugatuck. I hope that's right, James. Naugatuck Valley Community College.
Perfect.
So he's here to talk to us today about ICD-10 PCS, and we're glad to have him. Let's give him a warm welcome. James, welcome to the Brunch and Learn. Welcome to the Qualified community. We are ready for your presentation, so it's all in your hands, my friend.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be able to have this opportunity. This is the presentation I'd put together some time ago, right after, about a quarter after we had gone live with using ICD-10 back in 2015 to kind of, when you're busy learning something, you get caught up in the weeds of it, you forget the purpose of PCS. PCS had some very specific, I know the physician that developed it. Well, actually, I know the people that developed it. It had a very scientific base, more than it had a beyond clinical and medical. And I was in my role today, I was training an onboarding physician, and because physicians don't always understand, even though it was developed by physicians, they know CPT, AMA. So he really liked this presentation. He made me give it to him twice. He said, "Oh, now it makes sense to me." And I thought, well, let's bring it back, take it off the shelf, dust it off, bring it up to date, polish it up a bit, and present it to HIM professionals who might be moving from, wanting to move from outpatient to inpatient, or her maybe they're not coders, they're doing data management or research or whatever, and or just to have, again, like I said, you get caught up in worrying about what is the code for kidney transplant versus the actual structure and matrix of ICD-10 PCS. So that's where we're at with this. It's not a how-to, but more what's it all about. So yeah, we're going to take a fresh look. The intent and purpose, the original underlying, true to today, intent and purpose of ICD-10 PCS, some of its essential attributes that make it unique. It's a very unique code set in the world because in my current role, I'm more international, and a lot of other foreign countries really do like, including the World Health Organization, many of the attributes of PCS. And there are certain principles, meaning definitions, which I'll get into. And don't worry about if things aren't clear. I was telling Japera when we met yesterday that, the next slide kind of clarifies the preceding slide. So we'll have questions at the end. So the CMS contracted with 3M for PCS a long time ago, because it took a long time to develop. And one of the requirements was to improve accuracy and efficiency of coding. So we all kind of code the same. We'll see that it's a building block. Each code, it's not like CPT where one code could represent an array of things that were done. They're like building blocks. So they removed the spleen, they removed the liver, each individual thing that they do, which makes it easier to learn because you just code. If there's a code and it was done, you code it. It's not like, well, it's included here, it's included there. And that would reduce training effort, not only for coders, but physicians and people doing research. And make easier communications with physicians, given that they're clear definitions. Next slide. Completeness. So it's possible to create a procedure code in the system, a unique procedure code, and they don't have to be reused or used differently. They have distinct meanings that we'll get into the definitions, like of root operations. We'll see that. And to get a new code now, even though 3M developed PCS for CMS. CMS controls, owns, maintains, and the coordination and maintenance committee. So literally, it does take an act of Congress to have a new code created in PCS, and it's very expandable. The only fault now is they realize that for Med-Surg, we'll see they should have had a couple of values because even then they had no idea of how rapidly the technology would be expanding. But they did create a new technology section that we'll talk about later. Next slide. So the main thing here is standardized terminology. That's what makes it very scientific. Includes definitions of the terminology used. So every character, every value, every section has a definitive meaning, and it's not open for interpretation. You can't take it to mean something that it doesn't mean, which makes it a very extremely, like ICD-10 CM is a closed classification system, meaning there's only a single possible code for any disease. So PCS is the same way. There's only one single true code for every procedure that's done. Next slide. Which I like. I don't like, I'm not a fan of CPT. It's too open to interpretation, and the code descriptions are like little essays. And if they do this, it's this, and you gotta make sure they didn't do that because then you can't use that code. So this is much cleaner to use and much easier to train a new coder or a student, which I've had to do. It's multi-axial. It's kind of like a rubric cube, and all the different characters, values could come together in tables different ways, and you could kind of create the perfect code that you are looking for, build it. So the system has multi-axial structure. Each character has the same meaning within a section. So the first character represents a section, and in any given section of PCS, the values for those characters have the same meaning. So if A represents liver, it's not going to represent, kidney in some other table of PCS. So there's a high degree of flexibility and functionality, almost endless room for expansion, although they're starting to waver on that expansion part a little bit differently. Next slide. So all of this represents a significant step toward building a health information infrastructure that functions optimally in the electronic age. Remember, back when they were beginning the work on PCS, we were just talking about moving to the EHR, and already today it's a reality. Next slide. So undergirding ICD-10 PCS is a logical, consistent structure. The consistency is very important. There's absolutely no consistency in CPT, but there's nothing but consistency, structural consistency within ICD-10 PCS that informs the system as a whole. So it works more like ICD-10 CM. It's a whole classification structure, and it's closed. You can't be, when you have the right code because it clearly defines what was done or describes what was done in the op note, right down to the level of a single code. Next slide. So the process of constructing codes in PCS is it's logical and consistent. Individual letters and numbers called values are selected in a sequence. These values occupy the 7 spaces of the codes called characters. Each character is not only a placeholder, but represents a category. So each character in every PCS code has 7 characters. That's nice too, because if it doesn't, it's not a valid code. It's incomplete. Something's missing. So in other words, the first character, so whatever the value of the first character is, that tells you what section of PCS you're in. So you could kind of find your way around without an alphabetic index like other coding systems we've used in the past. Next slide. An ICD-10 PCS code is not an isolated fixed quantity like it is in CPT, bashing CPT, but it is like that. Like that code only has meaning there for that one. It's limited. It's very limited how you can use that code, but rather the result of a process of selections that could easily be altered by adding, adjusting, or changing the values. So say you come up with a code for a cholecystectomy, but you have open approach. All you need to do is change one of those character values to the value for endoscopic because you forgot that they did it. You didn't realize they'd done it laparoscopically. So it makes it much easier to adjust and tweak, but also to pull data from mega data sources. You can, select individual values or the characters, like with kind of wild cards to pull the data that you want to look at for research. A process of assigning values from valid choices for that part of the system in accordance with the rules governing co-construction, namely the tables, which we'll see in a minute, and the ICD-10 PCS coding guidelines. So there are coding guidelines like there are for the diagnoses specific to PCS. Next slide. People kind of forget that. So the definition of each character is a function of its physical position in the code. So the letter A, depending on which place it's in, has a different meaning. Or say 0. 0 in the first position means you're in the med-surg section. 0 in the 5th position means it's open approach. The same value placed in a different position in the code means something different, like I just described with 0. Hence the importance of placeholders. Z is the placeholder, the letter Z. So if there is no value that you can show, like for device, we use them a lot in device, and for the 7th, the final character. So you put the Z to show that there's nothing you're trying to represent in that place because you have to have the full 7 characters to be a complete valid code. This is also how the characters become categories. In other words, the first 3 characters, their values, will take you to the table. That table will be a category, like we're used to in ICD-10 CM. So, pneumonia would be a category, then underneath it would be the specific types, aspiration, pneumococcal pneumonia, whatever. Next slide. So the beauty, they realized one of the problems with CPT and with ICD-9 CM Volume 3 procedural code set was that including information, diagnostic information within a procedure code, very much restricted, limited its use, and made it quickly crowded and used up your codes, made it not as expandable. So say you in one category of a code set, you say it's hernia repair. So even though it's work being done on the abdominal wall, if it's not for a hernia, if it's for some other reason, excision of a abscess or whatever, you cannot use that code unless there's a hernia involved. So that was, they realized after years of using it that having diagnostic information greatly limited the expandability of a code set. At the time, it was logical. We didn't do a lot of procedures back then. It was related to a specific diagnosis, hernia repairs, tracheostomies. So you did kind of include, it made sense at the time, but we kind of outgrew that. We've evolved. So eponyms are not used. An eponym is a person's name because, like in CPT, there's the Mumford procedure, the Chevron procedure. Problem is, nobody has a clear understanding or definitions, a definition of what that is. Podiatrists tend to call everything a Chevron, or a Mumford. And in reality, it's not the strict, true definition of that eponym. So a not elsewhere classified NEC option is allowed for new devices and substances until more specific values can be created and added. CMS was keen on, they wanted to obliterate anything unspecified or other specified. They wanted to force there to be documentation that clearly defined what was done. But later in discussions with CMS, they realized that's not always possible. A patient may be dead on arrival, they may expire in the ED before they're ever admitted and worked up. Or like lab, sometimes you're presenting to be worked up to find out what's going on. So there is a need and a place for unspecified. I mean, it shouldn't be your discharge diagnosis after a 5-day stay, but there are places where it's legitimate. So not elsewhere classified equates to other specified. So in other words, there is detail in the documentation, but no code exists to capture it. So say they invent some totally new kind of a pump for the heart, and there is just no, until they could get that code in there, there's other. So in the table for in the cardiac section, there might be other device, and it could be any other device besides the ones that are listed out there. So all substantially different procedures are defined and hold the potential for complete and accurate code assignment, if even in the future. So with that, in the meantime, we're going to capture it this way with just other. But next year, when we add a value for whatever particular device it is, we can better capture it and then go back and through the data, kind of see how many of them were performed. Next, please. I was trying to click. I forgot I don't have control. Limited NOS option. That is a true, not otherwise specified. So a general body part, approach, route operation can be used when the level of specificity is not available in the record or cannot be obtained. So this is a true unspecified. So there is a possible value to be captured in the PCS code, but you don't have the documentation to support it. When we get into some of the character values, we'll see what are considered NOS. Next, please. Limit it. They very much wanted to limit this. So for a body part, so say there is a value in the table for liver, there is values for the specific lobe of the liver, but you don't have in your op note which particular lobe was worked on or the abscess was removed from. You can just default as like a general value to liver. Same thing for lung. There was a general lung. There's one for every lobe, but there's also just a general lung for when you don't have. And there's also general body regions like upper lower extremities. Next slide, please. So it's very limited. So approach is open, percutaneous, and via natural artificial opening. That's when, if you're not sure they use the scope or not, you could those are considered, although to me, they're specific, but they're still considered NOS because they are also available with endoscopy. Next. So for route operations, repair is the one general default. So if you cannot come up with a route operation definition that describes what is being documented in your op note, repairs your go-to root operation. Things like sutures, they're not going to have like a root operation suture. Massage, they're not going to have massage like when they do cardiac massage and things like that. So that's our general default. Next. So codes are comprised of 7 components. Each component is called a character. All codes are 7 characters long. Next. Individual units for each character are represented by a letter or a number. And these characters I've talked about earlier, they're called values. You want to stick with the real language. Early on when you're learning it, learn the real language. Their characters, their values, their placeholders, their med surge, their root operations. We all want to speak the same language. We don't want to introduce that confusion that we have in CPT. So just keep that in mind. Learn the definitions and adhere to them when you're conversing with other coders, when you're conversing with physicians, when you're teaching a student or training a fellow coder. It just, we want to maintain that clarity and that consistency in our profession. Plus, you sound more intelligent when you're using the real. Because somebody, you might say something to somebody and they'll say, well, what is she talking about? That doesn't even, that's not what I, they reference the manuals or something. So zero, 0 through 9 are available. And the only letters not available are I and O, so as not to be confused with 1 or 0. Next. These are the sections. So these are the 17 sections. New technology was added. We have a similar, they borrowed that from CPT because they have category 3 codes in CPT for new technology. So before they take up space or use a viable code, they want to kind of test pilot it to see how frequently it's used. Same thing goes for PCS. A lot of pharmaceuticals, newly introduced pharmaceuticals that are high dollar, and they really want to track for efficacy, especially CMS before they'll pay for it. I hate to say it, but money a lot of times still is at the root. So it's really med surge the biggest area that we as coders are in on the inpatient side. And don't forget PCS, that's another piece of PCS that CMS they want to only use for inpatient. They don't want to start adapting it or molding it for outpatient services. Med surge is the biggest one. Then obstetrics would be next. So each table, they're organized into tables. They have columns and varying numbers of rows. So they all have 4 columns for to get your characters. So the first 3 characters of a code defined a table or create a table. From there are 4 columns 4 through 7 to add more values. And then a row will specify the values that are allowed for that particular row. Next. And here's a shot of the table. So this is table 0DP, med-surg. We know it's med-surg, it's gastrointestinal, and it's for the root operation excision. And so this is one row. We're looking at one row. So the body parts that are allowed for this row are listed, the approaches that are allowed, the device, and the qualifier. So say there's some device that they've used on the duodenum, and you see that device down below in another row, but duodenum's not an allowed value. You can't beg, borrow, and steal. You're stuck with what's in the row. It would be an invalid code. Next. So you get the kind of rubric matrix formation or structure, architecture of PCS by looking at the table. So the first 3 characters, so provides the tables, they list the first 3 or sometimes 4, and then the tables must always be used. You always have to go to the tables. It's not an option. Oddly enough, the alphabetic index is not required. If you know the first 3 digits, you could figure it out on your own. You could just go directly to the tables. And again, no eponyms. Next. There is an alphabetic index when you're really stuck. I almost never use it. I just go right to the tables because I figure it's med surg. I figure out the section, med surg, obstetrics, then I figure out the body system, and then I figure out the root operation I'm looking for. And from there, I go directly to the tables. So your main index term, the main term in the index that you would look up is usually a root operation, excision, resection, extraction, and or the procedure type or a common procedure name. So you'd have resection, which is the root operation, fluoroscopy. So if you're stumped, you don't know where to begin, all you know is they use fluoroscopic guidance. You could start with fluoroscopy. It's a bad place to begin because you're going to have a lot of subterms, or like a prostatectomy. So you want to have an eponym, but you have like a prostatectomy, which you can't, that's not how it's described in PCS. It would be excision or prostate open approach. Secondary entries are underneath the main term. So that might be, so you have to go to excision underneath, or resection, then underneath would be prostate. And the table or code reference as specific as possible. The more you can hone in on it, the quicker it'll move for you by selecting a more narrow main term. Next slide. So there are currently 12 appendices. This is important to remember because even I am guilty of forgetting this because I don't usually use the book. I use the electronic version. It's a tab up at the top, and I forget, but they're of great value, and they answer a lot of questions, and you could avoid a lot of headaches and back and forth. So next. So here they are. The main one, body part key. So say in your table or your documentation, you have a particular body part, but there's not a value in the table. You go to this body part, look up the word you do have, it'll tell you what to use. And then there's all these definitions, your root operation definitions, your device definitions. There's same thing with substances. So if you look up a drug name, it'll tell you what to code it as the substance for infusions. There's other things too, but those are highly valuable. I can't recommend them enough. The main one to begin with is root operation definition. For a new student, or if you're learning it, the first phase is to learn, commit to memory. That move you along quicker when you're coding. The definitions of the root operations, because like I said, they're standard, they're never to be deviated from. All right, next. Next. So here with we're sticking with the med surgical. Oh, go back, Japera, please. We're sticking with med surg. So in med surg, these are the values or the meanings of the first seven characters: section, body system, root operation, body part, approach, device, and what is called a qualifier. That'll never, ever, ever vary. That's in that section. So it'll always be a section: the body system, the root operation, body part, your approach, the device, if it's left in, and a qualifier. Qualifier would be like if it was diagnostic. When you go to another section, characters 2 through 7 may vary somewhat. And they tried to the extent possible to keep it all consistent throughout the entire system. But obviously, like administration or, you know, the radiological section, they don't make sense. So they had to vary them some. Next. So the root operation is based on the intent. Always remember that. It's like the law. Intent. What is the intent? What is the surgeon trying to achieve? Or purpose of the procedure, the goal, the objective. When multiple procedures as defined by the distinct objectives are performed, then multiple codes are assigned. That was a tough one for coders because we always collapse things, like one code covered all. We didn't want to upcode or overcode, but it's the opposite. Because like I said, they're building blocks. So if they take the liver, they take the pancreas, there's a code for all of those. It's not, it's not, and then the grouper, the DRG assignment will take it from there and in a hierarchical order to assign the right DRG. So if they do it and there's a value and a root operation of that, then you code it, basically, is the rule. Next. So, so medical and surgical section principles, these are unique or important in the med surg. The root operation, it's a value consistent throughout this section. The approach, it's also consistent throughout this section. And body parts consistent throughout this section. So like I said before, if A means lung, then A is lung throughout the whole of the med surg section. And if 0 means open, then 0 means open everywhere in the med surg section. It may mean something else in another section, but for this section, that's what it means. Next. Believe it or not, you do start to memorize them, because I do. We're going to get into the characters now. Next. Talk about little section characters. So med-surg, med-surg in general, the first character defines the general type of procedure, and the med-surg, it always begins with 0. So when you see the 0, you know you're in med-surg. Next. like I said, typically where we are. So body system character next. We're going to go character by character. So the second character in med-surg is body system. And the reason they did that, they have body system and body part to more greatly to allow more expandability. Think about it. So if you break it out, you have respiratory, and that's one value used for a second character. Then for the body part, the fifth character, you reuse those 34 values. If you're in respiratory, if you're in gastrointestinal, if you're in cardiac, it just allows for greater expandability by allowing in the fifth place the 34 values to be used in different ways for different body systems and the various body parts within. So that's another thing I always keep in mind. There's body system, like respiratory, cardiac, gastrointestinal, urinary, and then there are body part values for the very specific, like ureter, um, mitral valve, whatever the specific body part is. And some of them they had to break them out because they're so huge. And it's the obvious offenders. Heart likes for vascular. So it isn't just cardiovascular like it is in CPT. We broke it out into heart, great vessels, upper arteries, lower vessels, veins, just for expandability, again, expandability, and so it's not so unwieldy. Next. So these are the body systems, quite a few of them. Nothing unusual here. Bones are upper, lower. Joints are upper and lower. And upper, lower is the Mason-Dixon line would be the diaphragm. So anything above your diaphragm is upper. Anything below is lower. Okay, next. Next, we'll get to root operations. So this is you begin with the root operation kind of, because you're most likely going to be a med surge. The body system should be pretty obvious. What are they doing here? Are they excising something? Are they inserting something? Are they repairing something? So that'll get you to your right table. And when you learn those definitions, it comes quite quickly. You'll read the op note and you'll say, well, yes, that's repair. They're suturing something, or that's an excision. They're taking a piece of the liver. Uh, so these are our root operations in the med surge. We'll get into each of them. In this part one, we're going to get into the first half of them. Part two, we'll get into the second half of them. So the root operation is coded according to the objective or the intent, like I've said previously. Discontinued or modified procedures are coded to the extent performed. So if they tended to do a laparoscopic appendectomy and they get in there and look around and realize there's infection or cancer or something's wrong and they don't do it, then you don't do the laparoscopic cholecystectomy. You do laparoscopy because they did do an inspection. So root operation revision is used only for devices. Composite terms are not root operations. You have to think about it. So colonoscopy, that's not a root operation. So you'd have to think when you learn the definition, you'd know that it's inspection. And sigmoidectomy, you would know that it's excision or resection, depending how much they take. Next. So combination procedures are coded separately. There are no combos like there are in CPT or like we had in I-9, if anybody even remembers I-9. I can't believe how long I've been at this. So each procedure with a different objective or different objective or episode. If there exists a PCS code, then it's coded separately. So if they do, and they could in the op note, you do have this frequently with like pacemakers. So if they insert the generator as an open approach, that would be open. And if they do the leads transvenously, then that would be percutaneous. So in the same operative session, you could have different root operations. But typically, once the patient's open, say they start off, doing it percutaneous endoscopic, but they can't proceed doing it that way, and they have to open the patient. Then it just converts. You only do the open, like where they landed in the end. So each procedure with a distinct objective during an operative episode is coded separately. The complete or partial redo of a procedure is coded to the root operation performed rather than to revision. Those of us that worked outpatient or remember I-9, everything was a revision. In PCS, it's kind of like just the facts. They want, what are they doing? What are they doing? And that's how you code it. So if to redo something like a revision of a hip replacement, they replace the femoral head or the liner, that's what you code, insertion of a whatever or replacement of a whatever, a supplement. So revision is confined or limited to correction of a malfunction or displaced device. We'll get into that part too. Certain codes, certain root operations require a device. They're only for devices. They're not for an anatomical body part. So, which is the precise definition in ICD-10 PCS. Next slide. So procedures that take out. So there's groups, categories, and this is a good way to teach or to learn. So if you're self-teaching, it's a good way to tackle them because they're a bit unsurmountable. AHIMA had a great book out on the root operations. I don't know if it's still in print or available, but just small little pocket-sized paperback that covered thoroughly all the root operations back when it was new, when it was coming out. So you could break them out for your students or for your people, staff you're training. Procedures that take out or eliminate all or a portion of a body parts. That's one category. Then there are procedures that involve putting in or on, putting back, or moving body parts. Procedures that take out or eliminate solid matter, fluids, gases from a body part. Procedures that only involve examination of the body part or regions. Next. Procedures that can be performed only on tubular bodies. That's another restriction. Some of these root operations are intended to be used only on a tubular body, like bypass or dilation. Procedures that always involve devices. So you might think, oh yeah, it's a revision. I'll use the revision of the, but then you'll get in there and realize there has to be a device involved, like a pacemaker. Procedures involving cutting or separation only. In other words, they don't take anything out, they just divide it. That would be division, would be a good example of that, or release. Procedures involving other repairs. We'll get into that. Future slides, probably I think those come in part 2. Procedures with other objectives. Next slide. So procedures that take out or eliminate all or a portion of a body part. So these are the root operations that fall into this category: excision, resection, extraction, destruction, and detachment. We'll talk about each of these. Next slide. So excision. So on each slide, you're going to get the slide deck, so you'll have it to review and study from. Actually, you could learn the root operations from the presentation. So the definition for excision is cutting out or off without replacement. That's important. Every word, every piece of the definition, component of the definition has meaning. It's very important because if they do a replacement, it's something else. A portion of a body part, not the whole body part. That's important too. And the explanation is that the qualifier diagnostic is used to identify excision procedures that are biopsies. That will be your 7th character qualifier. That's common in the med-surg diagnostic. So if they're only taking a little piece to biopsy it, then it's diagnostic. Examples would be like a partial nephrectomy. They don't take the entire kidney, liver, or liver biopsy. Next. Resection. The difference here is cutting out or off without replacement, again, with all of a body part. So when they take the entire, so when they just do a liver biopsy, it's excision. When they take, well, they wouldn't take your whole liver, kidney. So if they do a kidney biopsy, it would be excision. It would have the 7th character value X for biopsy, for diagnostic. But when they take the entire kidney, because cancerous or something, then it would be a resection. They're taking the entire organ. So a total nephrectomy or a total lobotomy of a lobectomy of a lung. Remember, I told you the tables have values for every lobe of the lung. So if they take the upper lobe, that would be a resection of the right upper lobe. Even though they're not taking all of your lungs, but they are taking an entire lobe. So if there is a body part value, then it has the potential to be a resection because they're taking that whole body part. All right, next. Extraction. This is kind of unique. We never really use this except for like teeth. Uh, Back in the days of ICD-9 CM Volume 3 procedure code set, or even in CPT. But again, it's not open to interpretation. You can't think, oh yeah, that's when they tear something out. This is the very precise, definitive definition. Pulling or stripping out or off all. So this one, it's not divided like excision resection. It can be all or a portion of a body part by the use of force. Again, we have the qualifier diagnostic available for when it's just being done to biopsy and find out what's going on with the patient. Dilation and curettage is an example, or vein stripping when they pull the saphenous, we have varicose veins. And that may be they take the entire saphenous vein. So that would be, and the dilation of curettage, obviously not taking everything. Um, Destruction. It's the physical eradication of all or a portion of a body part by the direct use of energy, force, or a destructive agent. None of the body part physically is taken out. Believe it or not, coders get confused on that. They'll hold up an account because they're waiting for a biopsy. The results from a biopsy. There isn't going to be any biopsy with destruction because there's nothing to submit to the lab. It's completely eradicated. And the interesting thing about PCS, it doesn't care. It doesn't matter. If it's creo, if it's chemical, if it's green light, laser, whatever they use, it doesn't matter. A destruction's a destruction's a destruction in PCS. There's not specific codes for the type, the methodology used to destroy the part. So again, I can't emphasize this enough because as a coding manager, I dealt with that where there's accounts held up and they're waiting for a biopsy and it's a destruction. There's never going to be a lab report. So examples would be fulguration, like of a rectal polyp, or cautery of a skin lesion. Okay, next. Detachment. This is very specific. So cutting off all or part of a upper or lower extremity. There's the body regions, so it has to be. There are no specific body sites. It's upper, lower extremity. They're general body regions. So the body part value is the site of the detachment with a qualifier, if applicable, to further specify the level where the extremity was detached. So here's a different use of the seventh. We've seen where the seventh character can be used as we'll get into that in part 2, when we talk about the seventh character and qualifiers, like above the knee, below the knee, that sort of thing. So that's another use of the seventh character besides indicating. So it's kind of it's like an adjective or an adverb. It's adding supplemental detail to the root operation or the device, and like for bypasses, it'll say the coronary bypass or the lower vessel that it was bypassed to, from to two. So that's how it's used with detachment. So the seventh character is different uses and meanings based kind of on root operation or device typically. So below the knee amputation, disarticulation of the shoulder. Okay, next. Medical and surgical section root operations. So procedures that involve putting in or on, putting back, or moving living body parts, not devices. So this is transplantation, reattachment, the opposite of detachment, reposition, and transfer. And you see these would be, when I said about excision and resection, it's important to know without replacement, because when they replace it, it becomes one of these. Okay, next, please. We're nearing the end. I think our time is good. So the first one is transplantation. So a transplantation is putting in or on all or a portion. You'll see that a lot. Very important to pay attention to that. Is it all or a portion, or is it just a portion, or must it be all of a living body part taken from another individual or animal to physically take the place and or function? So it may just take the place of, or can be used to supplement or improve the function for all or a portion of a similar body part. So the native body part may or may not have been taken out. Sometimes they'll remove a kidney or give you a kidney transplant and leave your damaged kidney in there because it's more trouble than it's worth, or introduces risk to the patient by trying to take it out. And the transplanted body part may take over all or a portion of its function. There's always confusion by newcomers with that. You get a kidney transplant, you still may be on dialysis, and that's fine. It's still a kidney transplant, but you still may need, it's helping your kidneys, but it's not fully able to take the place of your real original native kidneys. So kidney transplant, heart transplant. Next. Reattachment. So putting back in or on, so we put it in like an arm, or on like skin, um, all uh, all or a portion of a separated, it's got to be separated body part to its normal location or other suitable location. You might have been a victim of a horrible car crash or a burn victim, and they may have to temporarily, which they do, attach something somewhere else to keep it alive until they could put it back where it goes. So that's why they add that little piece of information in the definition. So an explanation would be like vascular circulation. Oh, go back, please. So vascular circulation and nervous pathways may or may not be reestablished. They probably would try to, but if they can't, then it's just there maybe cosmetically. Reattachment of a hand, reattachment of an avulsed kidney. Next. Reposition. These are like reductions. So moving to its normal location or other suitable. They always put in that other suitable because there are these odd or extreme cases where they have to move something out of the way somewhere in the meantime until the body heals, or there's other procedures. There might be a series of restorative procedures to finally get things back to where they belong. And again, all or a portion, doesn't have to be the whole of a body part. So the explanation here, you see where there was no explanation for one of them, but for the most part, I have definition, explanation, and some examples, which makes it a good learning tool for even on your own after the session. So the body part is moved to a new location from an abnormal location, or from so it could be a birth defect, or from a normal location where it is not functioning. So wherever it is, it's not able to do its job for whatever reason, some kind of necrosis or whatever, or an injury or a burn. The body part may or may not be cut out or off to be moved to the new location. So they could like just transfer, leave it attached to the blood supply and the nervous system and just kind of move it. Reposition of an undescended testicle, fracture reduction. These are all your fracture reductions are repositions. Okay, next. Transfer. So the definition of a transfer is moving without taking out all or part of a body part to another location to take over the function. So this is just to take over the function, not to replace all or part of the body part. So the body part transferred remains connected to its vascular and nervous supply. So a tendon transfer, a skin pedicle flap transfer. We do a lot of these in the hospital, obviously, after traumas and injuries and burns and things like that, where so a transfer, the key here is it remains. So again, you're moving without taking it out. You don't remove it. It's not a free graft. All or a portion of a body part to another location to take over the function of all or a portion of a body part. And the body part transferred still remains connected to its vascular nervous supply. And again, tendon, skin, muscle, even transfer muscle. And I think we're at the end, are we, Japara?
We sure are.
We're
So
close to it. Perfect
yeah,
timing, Liz, for Q&A. I just want to mention these. So these are some of the official references, and these are good too as you get more advanced in your studies. Rhonda Butler, I worked with, actually, when I first started at 3M, she was kind of like my mentor, my trainer. She worked heavily on PCS. She's still there today. Mullen, he's since passed. He was the physician that brainstormed this. He's kind of a genius, a Navy guy too, no less. And then Thelma, she's retired. Rich Avrill's still there. Barbara Steinbeck retired. But see, some of us are there, RHIAs and RHITs. We always get involved. And then there are, like I said, there are official coding guidelines, which you're going to want to reference for ICD-10 PCS. And then there's the complete official code set. So there was a reference, this reference manual, some of it's out of date, but it still gives some good examples. It's lengthy, it's very thorough, so, but it's still a worthwhile. And I think that we're at the end, right? Japera,
I
next one, just
believe so. Let's take a look and see if there's anything left. Yeah, so that's
thank
the
you.
last slide. James, I
Perfect time.
think this is perfect timing and such a perfectly timed presentation. I even dropped in the comment section myself that I wish I would have like sat in your class because PCS was so difficult for me to learn, but I feel that you have taken like this last 45 minutes or so, and you have made PCS sound so easy, breaking
What
apart
is it?
each of those concepts for us. Like, I cannot thank you enough. I think that you've painted a very clear picture of what PCS is all about and how we can begin to develop the codes that we need to develop if we're working in that inpatient type of setting and we're using PCS codes. So I have skimmed the chat as well, and I don't see any particular questions at this time related to the presentation, but we have a few more minutes, so I'll give folks some time to kind of roll these thoughts over in their mind and post any questions that you may have. Folks, please do post those in the chat for us. But yeah, again, James, thank you so much. So you have been working in PCS for quite some time now, or working with PCS for quite some time now, and it sounds like you really enjoy it.
I love PCS. I think it's intimidating. When it first came out, it was very new and different, and coders were horrified. It just seemed like you had to have, like I said, it goes beyond medicine and clinical. It's very scientific. It's almost mathematical in its structure and its architecture, which was deliberate. But once you fully understand that architect, it's very easy to learn. And that was one of the objectives of CMS. Actually, I was um, I was working in a small hospital, got acquired by a large hospital. And when they consolidated, I would have been coding manager for the coding department. They wanted me to become the ICD-10 educator trainer. So that's how I got really submerged in both CM and PCS. But I love PCS. I really do. I love it. When some other country is looking at PCS, it's like, oh God, great. Let them go with that, not CPT. Especially, I work with the UAE in the Middle East. They use, believe it or not, they use CPT for inpatient, um, which is just, I don't know if any of you are familiar with CPT, but like I said, every code description now is the size of a paragraph, an essay, just
Yeah.
to make your way. This is clear cut. Like I said, you look at it, it says, and the we'll get into that later, but the code descriptions for PCS are standardized too. So it's resection, liver, open approach, diagnostic. So it's always the same. So if you line them all up, you know what you're looking at. And for a coder, oh, did I miss the biopsy? When you line your codes up and look down the list, you can see that, oh, I don't have any, there's nothing diagnostic, so I must have missed it. Just makes life a lot easier. It really does. Once you get comfortable with it, it's like anything else, reaching your comfort level with it.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So again, I don't see any comments or anything or any questions, excuse me, no particular questions in the comment section. But how can is there any way that we can stay in contact you or reach out to you? I know you're coming back for part 2, but in the meantime, if someone maybe wants to just kind of reach out or connect with you in any kind of way,
Oh,
is there a platform?
I usually do that I'll just give my email. I usually put my email, I'll put it in the chat. How about that?
Perfect.
I
That
didn't
sounds
think about
perfect.
that.
Great. So audience members, please do take down James's email address. so that you can reach out to him directly if you have any questions. I do want to wrap us up here and let you all know that you can connect with the Qualified on a variety of social media platforms. Particularly, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where we post a wealth of content to help you navigate your health information management career and the journey. We want to make that journey as smooth as possible for you, so we are here for you. If you would like to learn more about the Qualified, please do contact us or look at our website, take a look at our website and see what services we offer that could be beneficial to you. We are here for you. And again, we want to help you. I also want to take some time right now. This is our second time doing this at a Brunch and Learn, but we are going to give away a ticket. We are going to give away one free ticket to next month's Brunch and Learn. It's actually part 2. So James is going to join us in November, particularly on the 16th, to give us part 2 of Unraveling ICD-10 PCS. If you came today, we want to see you next month, but we don't want you to come alone. We want you to bring someone with you. So please do share this information, and we'll be sending out the links for registering for next month's event. But again, we want to give away a free ticket, okay? So we have done a random selection, and our winner for today is Amanda Mathis. Cue the chimes, cue the bells, and cue the whistles, and cue the applauses, all right? So Amanda, congratulations to you. You have won a free hot seat at next month's Brunch and Learn with James Donaher, where we will be unraveling, unplugging, and digging into ICD-10 PCS a little bit more. Listen, the Qualified has some other events coming up as well. In addition to our Brunch and Learns, we also have game night. We have a HimProv. We call it HimProv game night. So please connect with us on social media so that you can learn when we will have those, our next game night. I didn't attend the last one, but I heard it was an absolute blast, and there were lots of giveaways and all kinds of fun stuff. This is particularly great if you are a student and you need some help kind of refreshing up on some of the HIM concepts. Game nights are fun for that, but they're also fun just for HIM professionals to come and build community. Now, we also have a Weekend Warrior test prep workshop going on, everyone. And that weekend, our next one is going to be on the 28th and 29th of October. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a Weekend Warrior workshop where it will focus on RHIT exam preparation. So if you are in the business of earning an RHIT exam, please do again stop by our website or social media platforms to learn about these events and how you can go about registering. Everyone, we are so glad that you took the time to join us. We have to give a huge thank you and warm appreciation to our guest speaker for today, Mr. James Donaher. Thank you so much for being with us and for gracefully, I'll say it again, gracefully presenting ICD-10 PCS content, okay? Which can be extremely daunting sometimes, but you have gracefully presented this information, and we look forward to part 2. So thank you so much, everyone, for being with us and for joining us for this October session of our Brunch and Learn, our monthly Brunch and Learn, Unraveling ICD-10 PCS Part 1. We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.